Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Accessible Transportation Resource Center's office hours. We're very happy to have you here. Today's session is going to be on the goMARTI project. The Accessible Transportation Resource Center, if you don't know, is a technical assistance center, a national technical assistance center focused on advancing accessibility and accessible transportation strategies across the country. My name is Grayson Lee, and I work on ATRC. So to introduce the project, we're going to have a member of our steering committee. The ATRC steering committee is a integral part of the project. It's a group of 20 accessibility advocates from across the country who help guide our project. So today, to introduce the goMARTI project, is Myrna Peterson. Myrna is a member of our steering committee and a member of the community in Grand Rapids, Minnesota, where the goMARTI project is taking place. So I will turn it over to Myrna in a second. One thing, if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat throughout the presentation. We're going to have time for questions at the end, and we will also have time at the end for you to raise your hand and ask the question that way if you would like. So I will turn it over to you, Myrna, to introduce the goMARTI project.
Thank you, Grayson, and welcome to this informative session that we're offering today. I'd like to turn it over to John Deggy, who is the Regional Mobility Director of our goMARTI project, working for Plum Catalyst. John is the Deputy Project Manager for goMARTI. This means he oversees the operations of the current services and plans for goMARTI 2.0, which are super exciting. This involves working between stakeholders and partners to ensure the service is designed, developed, implemented, and evaluated effectively. He's got a big job, but he does it very well. So without further ado, John, take it over.
Thanks, Myrna. I appreciate that warm welcome and thanks for having us. So my name is John Deggy. I work for the Plum Catalyst and we oversee the goMARTI project. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here and get some slides ready for you. All right. Can everyone see my screen? Okay, great. So we've got a fun picture of some of us on the left here. We were visiting Cohasset and doing some community engagement, and this is a fantastic slide to start things off. So just talking about the picture, we've got our goMARTI sunglasses on. We're meeting with the city administrator and other people at the community center in Cohasset, and what a fantastic way to start the presentation, because for us, everything starts and ends with community. We really want this project to feel, for the community itself, we want them to feel like they own it and they run it and they make the decisions, and we're here to facilitate that. So at the Plum Catalyst, we're a social innovation consulting firm, and we specialize in technology and transportation projects. So that's really how goMARTI came to be. And in fact, my introduction to goMARTI was at one of these listening sessions several years ago. I went to Rapids Brewing because a friend of mine in Grand Rapids said, "Hey, John, you got to come with and check out this self-driving car project that's coming to town." And I told him, I said, "You got to be out of your mind. Like, Grand Rapids isn't getting self-driving cars. This is way into the future. That's something that big cities get." And he said, "No, come with me and check it out." And I went there and I heard the CEO of our company, Tammy Meehan Russell, presenting. And I heard people from May Mobility, who provides the autonomous vehicles, presenting. And before the presentation was over, I looked over to my friend and I said, That's it. I'm going to change what I'm doing with my career. I'm going to work for these guys, and I'm going to get involved with this because this project is too cool and too important. I definitely need to be involved. So things ended up working out for me, and I got to work on the project. But at first, I started with May Mobility, who's the autonomy vehicle provider. And then I actually switched recently in April. I started working for the Plum Catalyst. So now I get to be the project deputy project manager, and I get to oversee a lot of the aspects that Myrna said in her introduction there. So we'll look at the goMARTI team. We'll look at the history of goMARTI here, and we'll talk about what's happening in goMARTI today. And we'll look at where goMARTI is heading in the future. And hopefully, if I'm quick enough, we'll leave plenty of time for you all to ask questions. And please write down questions along the way or put them in chat so that I can get to them all. All right, so launched in September 2022, the goMARTI project was on the roads. This is a project that started in Grand Rapids, Minnesota, but is expanding to neighboring communities. And the picture that you're looking at is Grand Rapids in the fall. It's just absolutely beautiful. We can see our vehicle down in the bottom left of the slide. And fun fact, I'm actually piloting the vehicle in here. So you can't see me in the picture, um, but I'm the one operating the vehicle. So we're traveling along in the nice fall scenery here. Projects like this are developed by a village, so there's a lot of groups involved. So some of the agency partners that are involved are the City of Grand Rapids, Visit Grand Rapids, IRRR, which is the Department of Iron Range Resources and Rehabilitation, the MN Department of Transportation, Arrowhead Transit, Grand Rapids Chamber of Commerce, IEDC. Some of the private sector partners are the Plum Catalyst, which is the company that I work for. VIA is one of the tech providers. They work on the app and ride hailing aspect of the project. That also has to do with dispatch as well. Working with VIA allows us to really automate the ride booking process. So there's an app that people can get on smartphones, and that's for Apple and Android. And it works a lot like Uber or Lyft, where you go to book a ride and then your vehicle shows up and brings you to where you're going. May Mobility is, I mentioned earlier, is the company that I started working for the goMARTI project. So I've actually been involved with goMARTI since it deployed in Grand Rapids. And I worked with May Mobility for a little bit first there. They provide the autonomous vehicles. They also provide the site staff that runs the autonomous vehicles since the tech is really kind of specific. They have their own folks that sort of run the technology. But since I've worked for the Plum Catalyst now and also May, I've got kind of a unique perspective on how everything works together. Some of our nonprofit partners are the Blandon Foundation, Mobility Mania, which is Myrna's advocacy group, and then First Call 211. First Call 211 is also a really interesting partner for us because our new facility happens to be the First Call 211 garage. So our vehicles are stored there and we run operations out of the First Call Center. And the First Call Center is also another way of booking a ride. So you can use the app provided by VIA in order to book your ride. If you're tech savvy and have a smartphone, great. If you need to talk to a person about booking your ride, or if you have questions about it, you can call 211 or 218 goMARTI, and that calls the First Call Center, and then those folks are able to answer your questions and book a ride for you. So we wanted a more tangible way for people to actually talk to a human as well, but we want that tech option as well. So we work with both First Call and VIA so that we've got both sides covered. Some of our academic and research partners are the Next Career Pathways. This is a group that we work with, working with K through 12 in education and helping young people understand what our service is. This is a really exciting partnership as well because we want young people to see the possibilities in technology and transportation and accessibility, and try to make a connection between, what they're seeing in technology in the world and possible career paths. We also work with Itasca Community College, and same kind of story here. We're really excited about this partnership because we're working on, developing through lines of curriculum from what people are learning in their classes to actual career options for them. And then our last partner that we're mentioning here is the University of Minnesota, and I talk about them a little bit on some more slides, so I'm just going to kind of keep going here. All right, so a little bit of history before we talk about where we're currently at and what we're doing next. But I always like bringing this up because, I mentioned before that it takes a village to create a project like this. It also takes a lot of research and thinking. This isn't something that's just born overnight and then you just deploy it and it works. goMARTI actually has a pretty rich history. Rural challenges drove the need for transportation solutions. What I mean by this is it was the community that came together and said, "Hey, we're blocked by not being able to get to places, or our events would have more success if we could have transportation to and from them." When talking about people that are job searching or trying to get into the workforce, they pointed out that transportation is a challenge. Students pointed out that transportation is a challenge for being in sports or the arts. People wanted to sign up for things, but they didn't really have a way of getting there. And this is true for a lot of wheelchair riders as well. They want to get to things, but there's limited options with transportation, particularly in a rural area where there's less options available. So rural challenges drove the need for transportation solutions. That's where this all starts. The Blandin Foundation study recommended transit options way back in 2008. All right, so Blandin did a study. They worked with several groups, and they said, you know what, if transportation options, if there were more of those, everything could just do better. Simply, student activities, workforce developments, and of course, accessibility. So the Complete Streets Initiative engaged stakeholders for better transportation, and a task force analyzed the impact of technology vehicles on disadvantaged groups. And so that's how this all comes to be. Like I said, it's not just something that you just think of and you deploy. This came out of need, right? So rural places need more options for transportation. All right, so goMARTI 1.0 in a snapshot. So the original project was designed to be a 24-month pilot that would end in September of 2024. We did that, and then we actually got some more funding to continue the project through this fall as well. So add another year onto this. It was originally designed to be 24 months, but we were able to keep it going a little bit longer than that. It deployed 5 self-driving shuttles, 3 of which are wheelchair accessible. And then the picture that you're seeing on the left, this one's near and dear to my heart. So this picture is actually me and Myrna. And this is on media day and launch day of the first pilot version of this project. And we were demonstrating using one of the accessible vehicles, and Myrna's just been a saint in volunteering for this. She puts herself out there to show people how this technology works and to show them that it's not scary. So she's more than willing to get in the van whenever we needed her to. This was a fun day. We had a lot of media there. I got to meet Amy Klobuchar that day. She gave a speech, and we launched this service to Grand Rapids. Fun thing about our service, you may have heard some laws in Minnesota, but we have autonomous vehicle operators that are always engaged. So what this means is we've got a self-driving vehicle that's capable of completely driving itself. But Minnesota law requires that an operator be behind the wheel. So we test this technology with an operator behind the wheel. And we also really make use of the friendliness of our operators too, because we want to introduce this technology and make sure that people are getting comfortable with it. So our operators are a great way to do that. They get to talk to new riders, they talk to the community, and of course they're there to help our wheelchair passengers get in and out of the vehicle. across all of the different companies that provide autonomous vehicles right now, there currently isn't a completely autonomous wheelchair option. So having that operator there to assist our wheelchair passengers is crucial for us to engage with the wheelchair community. This is also the first rural large-scale launch of a public autonomous shuttle pilot. So the first time a smaller city like Grand Rapids has gotten autonomous vehicles. I don't know if you all follow the news with technology, but we hear a lot of stories about AVs and autonomous vehicles. They're coming out of places like California, in Texas, in Arizona. And there's a reason for that. Those places all have favorable laws and favorable climate to test autonomous vehicles. In Arizona, you don't have to deal with much weather other than the heat. Same thing with testing places in California and Texas. So for us, we're deploying this technology in Grand Rapids, Minnesota, with the specific challenge of launching in a rural area, but also testing in extreme Minnesota winter. We're doing it in a tough place on purpose because having autonomous technology that only works in ideal circumstances, that doesn't actually solve anything. It doesn't actually help anybody. We think of wheelchair rides being the same as that. Having AV technology that just doesn't account for wheelchair use, that doesn't solve everything for us. In order for this to be an actual solution for people, we need to be thinking holistically. How do we operate in winter? How do we operate in a rural area? How do we make sure that we keep wheelchair passengers top of mind? All of these things are really important to us. Lastly, due to the funding we're able to get for this project, rides have been free. So we've given a lot of rides at no cost to the community. So they're not paying a ride fare when they're taking their ride, which is important to us. All right, next slide. So thinking about our service area, we've got a 16.5 square mile area in Grand Rapids with 75 virtual pickup and drop off locations. Currently, the hours of operation are that we're closed on Mondays, but we operate Tuesday through Friday, 2 p.m. to 10 p.m., Saturday, 10 a.m. to 10 p.m., and Sunday, 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. Remember how I talked about this project being community driven? These hours came right from that. Our community spoke to us. We did a lot of community sessions when we were planning these hours to hear from different groups on when they needed help. And this is what people came back with. People told us that for the most part, they have some options during the day with some other services, but they couldn't get to the events that were in the afternoon and evening. So we looked at that and we thought that Tuesday through Friday, 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. would help fill that gap. Saturday, we chose to operate 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. to get people rides during the day also and also at night. And then we also heard from a lot of people that said that, especially the accessibility community, that there just aren't good options of getting to church on Sundays. So we looked at that and we agreed. We thought that deploying on Sunday would be important and making sure that we could get people to and from their services that they're going to on Sundays. Also, like to think that we operate in concert with the other services that are out there. So Arrowhead Transit exists. They operate buses all over the Iron Range. So we looked at their hours and we wanted to make sure that we were adding something of value and not just putting more vehicles on the road at the exact same times. This is a micro transit project, and as such, we get to sort of pick what we think would have the most value. So we kind of worked around other services hours to make sure that we were adding a complement to those and not just deploying more vehicles. Again, adding just more vehicles at the same time doesn't actually solve anything. We think of everything we're doing as solving something or adding something of value that people didn't have before. And then the map on the right. So all of these little bubbles are showing the different pickup and drop off locations. So I mentioned earlier that the service works a little bit like Uber and Lyft, but it's also kind of like a bus in that there's specific bus stops that you go to. And that's what these numbered locations are. All of these numbered locations are the virtual pickup and drop off points. You can also see these in the app when you go to use the app. And then we print these out and give them to people as well so that they can see where our stops are. And the goal here is to have a stop within a few blocks of where people tend to be or where they tend to go. So in the first month of goMARTI, we gave 350 plus rides. 60 of those were wheelchair accessible rides, and 71% were repeat riders. It was a pretty good first month, but we've always sort of seen this as a learning opportunity, and we wanted to grow from there. Since then, I'm happy to report that we've given over 25,000 rides. 1,300 of them and more has been wheelchair accessible rides. And 94% of our riders are repeat riders, which means that when people use our service, they like it and they start using it to get around. We've driven over 268,000 miles, and I like to brag that we've operated with autonomous vehicles through the snowiest winter in the Iron Range. That sounds like I'm just blowing smoke, but it's a true fact. That we had the snowiest winter on record in the Iron Range a couple of years ago, and we were out there testing our AVs in that. So we were driving our self-driving cars through the snowiest winter in the Iron Range. And we've operated safely through 3 Minnesota winters now, which is an awesome fact. So some of the project goals. So we've aimed to advance and inform the technology in rural and winter conditions. This is a big one. So just getting a lot of data, putting safe miles on these vehicles while giving rides to people. We're doing this one. Engage with the local community and build trust in self-driving shuttles. We have a lot of our project time and budget dedicated to continuing to talk with the community. So we get out, we have focus groups, we go to bigger events. Grand Rapids has Tall Timber Days every year, which is a big festival. We always set up a table there and talk to everybody about the service. And we're listening. We get their feedback along the way. Part of what we're doing is informing them on how to use the service and why it's a good thing. But a lot of it is also just listening and hearing from people what's working, what's not working, where would you need a ride to, where would you need a pick up and drop off location to be added. And we hear from people along the way. And then we actually use that feedback to make changes to the service. We've moved stops around. We've moved stops to the doors of places. One of the largest pieces of feedback, particularly from wheelchair users, was if you have an autonomous vehicle that just stops only on the road, it doesn't go in parking lots, we can't really get to the buildings safely. So as soon as we started hearing that, we started looking for ways to both advance the technology so it could drive in parking lots and also places where we could safely just get into safe parking lots. And we started putting stops at doors of places. We did that at living facilities, at hospitals, places where it might be more likely that someone might have an accessibility challenge. But again, that came from hearing from the community and never being done listening. We start and end with that, with everything that we do. It's always listening to the community. Our vehicles have accessible mobility options. And then we also have a project goal about workforce and economic development. So I mentioned earlier about some of the training that we do with K through 12 students. We're going to do that with college students as well. And then we just hire people, right? So this is a transportation service. So we've got vehicle operators, we've got site staff, we've got an engineer on staff. So this project has created 25 plus jobs that are not just entry-level jobs. These are jobs in the tech sector. Just think, I get to live in Grand Rapids, Minnesota with 12,000 people, which is considered small and rural, but I get to work in green energy, in tech developments, in self-driving cars, in transportation. It's just a wild concept when you think of it and you travel to other rural towns. Not every place has this. So the workforce and economic development opportunities here are huge. So this is how it works to book a ride. All of the different locations that we have around the route in Grand Rapids have one of these signs. And the sign has a number on it. If you are walking around and you happen to see one of these signs and you're like, oh, I think I might like to try a ride. You can call 211 to get an account set up and to have them help book a ride. You can use the QR code or find the app in the App Store on Mac or Android. And then you could also go to the website, gomarti.com, to get instructions on how to do this. All of the stops have numbers. So if you make a call or if you're looking in the app, you can easily find the place that you're at. Let's say you're at stop 4. In the app, you could just put in that you're getting picked up from stop 4, and then you could pick any of the other locations as your drop-off point. So really kind of the only limitation here is that you have to use the pickup and drop-off locations as where you're getting picked up and where you're going. We don't go door to door, address to address. That's just not how it works. It's a little bit more like a bus in that instance. So you book the ride by calling the 211 call center or using the app. You can follow along in the app. It shows where the car is and if it's on its way. And then you take your ride and then you get to where you're going. Um, it's pretty simple. And if you've used Uber and Lyft, it's a lot like that. It gives you a predicted wait time of how long you might be waiting for your ride and the total completion time. And I'm thrilled to tell you that we've kept wait times on an average less than 10 minutes. Sometimes rides might take a little bit longer than that, but also they're also sometimes a lot shorter than that. And just having a 10-minute wait time for a ride in a rural area is just fantastic. And that's really the point of it being microtransit is you're not waiting for, 30 other people to sign up for a ride, and you're not waiting for a scheduled bus to come through at a certain time. When you're at one of these stops and you go to book a ride, it's going to be there in around 10 minutes or less, which is just a game changer for people that don't have access to transportation. I use the service for fun. Sometimes I just come into town and I ditch my truck and I use goMARTI instead. One of my favorite stories is just feeling like absolute royalty rolling up to the county fair in Rapids and using goMARTI to get there and watching all of the people struggling to find parking spots and to drag their coolers from miles away to get into the county fair. You can park your car at the airport or Target or even Walmart now and get a goMARTI ride to where you're going. So you can park and ride and then use a free ride to get around Grand Rapids to do your errands, which is just super cool. All right, so that was all goMARTI 1.0. So think of that like sort of the past and what we've tried and what we've learned from. And now we're getting into goMARTI 2.0. So the whole thing it's always been evolving and it's always sort of changed along the way to improve. But we've got some big changes and some big improvements coming with 2.0. So goMARTI is evolving and growing with more vehicles, expanded service area, new hours of operation, younger rider group, new tech and data gathering. So IRRR, the Minnesota Iron Range Resources and Rehabilitation, was awarded 9.3 million to expand the region's rural transit operations. So this means more autonomous shuttles. This means we're getting electric vehicles and charging. We're continuing on-demand transit and trip planning and even expanding that. There's still an accessibility focus, making sure our wheelchair riders get the same service as everybody else. Inclusive planning and management by getting out into the community and talking to everybody and making sure their ideas are not just heard, but used in the project. And then there's still that economic and workforce development component as well. We're adding more jobs as we go too. So 2.0 project in a snapshot. This is a 36-month program that starts in September here. So we get to go for another 3 years. Rides will continue to be free for another 3 years too. This is huge for our community. There's a lot of low-income folks in here that are using this to get their lives on track, getting to work, getting to shopping, getting to the things that they need to be able to do in order to live. So there's 5 to 6 automated vehicles in the fleet serving the Grand Rapids area. 3 to 4 of them will be wheelchair accessible. So we say 5 to 6 because we're working on some of the numbers of like how many we can have on the road. We want to optimize, but then have as many vehicles on the road as possible. And then 2 to 3 hybrid or electric shuttles, with one of those being wheelchair accessible. Remember, the whole project started with 5 vehicles, so now we're scaling up to 8 or 9 vehicles. 20 to 25 local jobs provided, and we got to make sure that all of those jobs from 1.0 continued. So all of those folks are still working through, and they'll be able to be part of this expansion in the fall as well. And I said it, but it's worth saying again, rides will continue to be free. So just such a huge community impact for people that need the help. We've got a fresh new look. I don't know how many people in this group have seen the wrap on the current vehicles, but we've got some really nice looking new branding with our colors and logos and everything on there. I'm really liking this design. To me, it reminds me of the Minnesota night sky. We've got the tall pine trees. We've got the nice dark blue. The letters remind me of stars in the sky, and our goMARTI logo looks like a big moon shape on there. So this design feels real authentic to us being northern Minnesota. So I'm pretty happy with this. We even worked with the Deer River and Grand Rapids Tech Hub students to collaborate on some of the design elements. So this is another example of us working with the community and really thinking about our people in our town and bringing them in to help plan for things. And the wrap design was part of that. What's new with goMARTI service? So expanded service, new stops, more ways to get around. We're even calling things two different zones now. We've got the Grand Rapids zone or GRZ. We've got the Highway 2 zone or H2Z. This also includes La Prairie. So we've added a college stop and a food bank stop in La Prairie. So let's make sure to mention them too. So new stops that are coming in the Grand Rapids zone. So we've got a phased scale up in July and August here where we're not even waiting till fall. We're just gonna add some stops as we go so that people can start using them. We're thinking, hey, we're already doing this work. We're getting it ready. If it's ready to deploy, why make the community wait for it? Let's just get some of the stuff out there. So in June, we launched a stop at the college. That's in the upper right of the map. The food bank, which is the purple stop on the right of the map, kind of in the middle, and then a stop at Walmart, which is the southernmost stop on here. So we launched those at the beginning of June here, and I'm happy to report that Walmart is already our most popular stop. So just this last week, we gave 115 rides to and from Walmart, and then we gave a total of 462 rides to everywhere else. So, Walmart is a pretty big contender of where people want to get to and from. All of the green stops that are on here are being added in July. That includes places like the Judy Garland Museum, the Emeralds Living Facility that's behind that, and a bunch of hotels that are around the Pokegama area. We wanted to make sure that we were getting some of the tourism destinations in Grand Rapids on our route. So that's why we included the Judy Garland Museum as well as a lot of the hotels. And then the orange stops are going to be coming in August. So in the upper left of the map, we've got a section where we're adding some stops. We're going to be getting to the first call for help center. We're picking up some stops around the neighborhoods back there just to make sure that those people are accounted for. And we've got a stop at the Forest Lake Motel and the liquor store that's over there. So that'll be an interesting addition as well. Now, after September, we're still going to be adding to this. So there's an area north of Golf Course Road, kind of west of Pokegama, that's got a lot of neighborhood roads in it that we want to add. And then there's kind of an empty spot in our route in the northeast top right corner, where the neighborhoods are just a little bit farther away from the route than we'd like. So we're going to sprinkle in some stops in there. So there's more coming. This isn't a finished thing. This is just the stuff we're really excited about coming early this summer before the full 2.0 launch even happens. So in 2.0, there's also expanded service coming to what we're calling the Highway 2 zone or H2Z. So the map on the right here shows stops in Cohasset, Deer River, and Ball Club. The purple stops are the Cohasset area. We're going to Tioga Beach. We're going to Portage Park. Oops. We went forward a slide on accident, and we're going to a lot of the other town places in Cohasset, including Town Hall. The blue stops are all in Deer River. They're a little bit bunched up on each other in this map just because of how it's zoomed in. But what I want to tell you is that we're going to a lot of the places in that town. We're getting to the community centers, we're getting to the schools, we're getting to the popular stores and shopping areas. And again, this is designed by the community. These people are giving us ideas about where they need to go, places where they're struggling to find rides to, and they're helping us plan where these stops will go. And then we're going all the way over to the west here, all the way to Ball Club. So Ball Club's got several stops within itself. And same idea here. We go to the community centers, we go to the living facilities and whatnot. And Ball Club's a little bit smaller, so there's a few less stops in there. But what's really neat here is that we're connecting each of these outskirt towns to each other, and we're connecting them to Grand Rapids and to the full service that we showed with the autonomous vehicles. So for the first time, somebody in Ball Club can get an on-demand ride where they use the app or they call 211 and they can ride it to Deer River or Cohasset or all the way into Rapids. And they can take that ride all the way to Walmart if they want. And they can get a ride all the way back. Those rides are free. Those rides are on demand, as I explained before. And connecting these areas is something we're really excited about because they have very, very limited transportation options right now. So this is part of what we're doing. We're testing how this technology works in rural areas. But it's not just a technology test. We're helping real humans get to where they need to go. And it's just such an exciting thing to be able to be part of. All right, so the next slide, new hours of operation starts in the fall. We heard a lot from our community over the last few years with goMARTI 2.0, or sorry, 1.0. And one of the things that they said was your hours were great getting into the evening because we didn't have options, but we also still need more help during the day. One of the most common points of feedback was, it's great that you guys go until the night, but we still need more options during the day, even though there are other services. So we still go till 9 p.m. But we get to start at 10 a.m. So that's much earlier. We're also adding Monday, and Monday was another big request. A lot of people did like needing to wait until Tuesday to get started getting their free rides. We're keeping service on Sunday as well, but it's a little bit of a shorter day. It's 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. And again, we wanted to meet the need of the request of the community, which is they want to be able to get out earlier on Sundays. So we're keeping 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. But this goes 7 days a week now. So starting this fall in September, we'll go 7 days a week. We'll have these expanded hours. And we really think that this is going to help people do what they need to do. Adding service during the day and on Mondays is going to help more senior citizens. The senior citizens really told us that, hey, if we're out and about, we're doing it in the morning. If we're going to appointments, we're not waiting till 4 or 5 at night to go to our doctor's appointments. So we heard that, and we want to make sure we accommodate that. And then also people going to the food bank told us that, if we're getting food from the food shelf, we're doing that when it opens, and they open at 10. So we decided to match our service up to when the food bank actually opens so that those folks can get what they need. All right, a little bit about the technology. So the vehicle you're looking at is the May Mobility Toyota Sienna. This is what the current fleet and operation has. So if you get a goMARTI ride today, this is the vehicle that you're going to be riding in. So it's got space for storage in the back. It's got the rider capacity of 4, but with a max of 5. There's new and emerging safety and customer experience features like cabin awareness inside the vehicle. And then it's got a very comfortable ride with what May Mobility calls MPDM, or their multi-policy decision making. And that's kind of the brains of the vehicle. The multi-policy decision making is the computer thinking and making choices as the vehicle drives. It's really fun for me to talk about this project with people because we talk about it being a self-driving car project all the time, and it's something that's on the front of our minds when we talk about it. But I've met people that ride this that got to know it just because they needed a ride. And they've been riding around in it. And I said, so what do you think about the self-driving part of this, or the car driving itself? And I've actually heard this. People have responded with, "What? I didn't know the car was driving itself." And to me, that's profound. Like, we think about this all the time because it's a big part of the project. But for someone that just needs groceries and this is the free and easy option, they're using it out of convenience. But I love it when I hear, I didn't even know that car was driving itself, because that tells me that they felt comfortable, they felt safe, the vehicle behaved just like a human-driven vehicle. And that's kind of profound. If the technology is so good that people riding in it didn't really realize that it was a self-driving car. That's right where we want to be. So I'm really proud of that I have heard that. It's also just kind of funny, so I like sharing that story. It's got kind of an open feel. Since we've got a big computer riding shotgun, there's no passenger seat. There's actually a computer stack in the passenger seat area. There's connectivity, so there's a rider Wi-Fi hotspot and USB charging that people can use while in the car. They are hybrid vehicles, so they get really good gas mileage. And easy to get in and out of sliding doors on both sides of the vehicle. The wheelchair accessible version of the vehicle can fit the wheelchair passenger plus 2 additional people or a service animal. Of course, there's the attendant that is behind the wheel, and they can assist the wheelchair passenger as well. So accessibility is really important to us, and being able to get to our wheelchair riders in around 10 minutes is just fantastic, because a lot of the other options that they relied on had them waiting way too long. All right, so even more technology. So we've got a screenshot of what the app looks like on the left over here. When you book the ride, you see a map and you see the service zone. You see these little balloons as the places where you can get picked up and dropped off at. You can also type in an address of where you are and where you're trying to go, and it will help you find where the nearest stop is. So the app is really useful because it helps teach people how the service works. Um, so yeah, the booking software is the goMARTI app. We're also working on new technology called the Transit app, where you'll be able to link up with other systems. So you should be able to see both Jefferson lines and Arrowhead rides in this Transit app. That way, if you're taking a bigger trip outside of this service zone, this app would make suggestions for you on how to do that trip. An example would be, once this is done, we're picturing being able to take a ride with goMARTI. That starts with goMARTI in Rapids, but you could use the Transit app to plan your entire trip to maybe all the way to Duluth and then even to the Twin Cities. So all in one app, you could get around, even though goMARTI is just located in Rapids, La Prairie, Cohasset, Deer River, and Ball Club. We're connected to other systems. First Call 211 is our dedicated call center, and people can call to book a ride by calling 211. They can also call 218 goMARTI. That's just another fun way to remember the phone number. And then we've got fully electric and electric vehicle infrastructure coming with charge stations around the towns that I've been mentioning so far. Common questions that people ask me. So I cannot get through a presentation without being asked, how do the vehicles handle winter? You can't get through it. So I always put a slide in now just to tell people about how we do in winter. And the fun thing is we've actually done really well in winter. And a lot of the questions that people had about autonomy and safe driving with autonomous vehicles in winter, we started to find answers for some of those questions. So pick up and drop off locations was something that we studied. Are we going to be able to stop in the right place and pick up and drop people off correctly? So we actually collaborate with the city to make sure our stops are what we call bus stop clean, which means if you would have a bus stop where you plow it and you shovel and you put salt and sand down and things like that, that we would do that at our signed locations as well. So there's also snowbank identification and veering technology. This is something that's gotten better, much better over the years, and it allows the vehicles to actually recognize when an object is there and then be able to veer around it. And this behavior for a self-driving car is useful if there's a trailer parked in your route, if there's a vehicle that shouldn't be there, if there's something piled up there like rocks or debris or something, that the vehicle could recognize what's going on and then safely veer around it. Think of it like we do all these human things when driving that we don't even realize that we do. When the snow falls in winter, the city plows it up to the sides. And then humans kind of make their own new paths, and we don't even see the paint underneath anymore. So the vehicles needed to learn this. This is something that when first deployed, no one had taught the vehicles how to do this. So we had to go through a round of teaching the vehicle how to identify that there's an object there and then veering around it so that it can move. Notice in the picture too that the paint is covered up on the ground. So a lot of people ask, well, how can the car drive itself if they can't even see the paint lines on the ground? And the answer is sensor redundancy. So all AVs companies talk about this. And the idea is that by having multiple ways that you see, you're able to cover more bases and behave safely. So these vehicles have LiDAR, which is lasers. They have radar, they have GPS, and they have visual cameras. And through a combination of all of that fed into the computer is able to see even if there isn't paint lines on the road. They have a process that's called localizing, where it actually recognizes where it is based on all of the lasers it's bounced off from all of the things in the environment. So it's pretty remarkable. We can operate through winter even when there's snow and ice covering the roads because we don't necessarily need to see the paint line. We see the rest of the world around us through LiDAR, radar, GPS, all of that stuff. Another really fun thing that I like to point out, it's fun for me, but it's like the least fun technology thing. People always ask like, oh, how can you be safer? Is the autonomous vehicle safe in winter? And what we found is that by simply having the vehicles programmed to drive at safe speeds, we don't get into as much trouble as the human drivers. People tend to overreact when the snow falls. They either go way too slow or they go way too fast and they don't respect it. Our autonomous vehicles are programmed to operate at a safe speed, and just by following the speed limit and staying under it and staying even as opposed to overreacting, that makes the vehicle pretty darn safe just on its own. So it's fun for me to explain. It's probably the least interesting technology thing, but in order to stay safe, just follow the speed limit. Don't overreact. Don't overcorrect. Those things help make you safe. I love this as an example when I talk about this project because it shows you how these vehicles can be more safe than, other cars that are out there. There's also workforce development activities. So we've worked with student groups. I was just talking about how the vehicles localize by recognizing their surroundings. In a rural area, especially in winter when everything's covered in snow, there can be really wide open spaces. So the picture you're looking at is actually a student installation project where they created several of these pillars that look like art installations when you're driving through town. But they're actually technology development projects because the vehicles are using these to localize or recognize where they are. Without any man-made structures in these areas, it was a little bit challenging for the vehicle to recognize where it was or to localize. So we worked with student groups to create these art installations, and now the vehicles know where they are in some of these open areas. And we've created a lot of job opportunities along the way here. So that's kind of it for my presentation, but I think we've saved enough time for questions if you've got them, maybe just a couple. Looks like it's about 12:50. Thank you for having me. Thank you to Myrna for the introduction and all of the partner groups that have sort of supported goMARTI along the way. Just wanted to give a shout out to my team members, Tricia and Heidi, who are here, who really supported this presentation as well. So thank you guys.
Thank you so much, John, for the presentation. I know there have been a lot of questions in the chat, so I can read off some of them. The first one was, what would you say is the biggest obstacle autonomous vehicles have of being 100% wheelchair accessible?
Well, it's loading and unloading the passenger safely. Right now, it's, the seatbelt mechanisms and make sure that they're safely secured. There are companies working on solutions for that, but currently there aren't options. So you have to think that the wheelchair passenger needs to go into the van and then the seat belts need to be there and something needs to hook them up for the person. So either that's automated systems that, strap them in once the wheelchair is in, or something else. But currently there isn't a solution that everybody's using. So everybody's kind of watching to see what could be developed for that. That's the number one blocker right now.
Great. I know Heidi, who also works at Plum Catalyst, has been answering a lot of questions in the chat as well. So I'm going to skip over the ones that she's already answered. Camille asked Do you know what percentage of your riders are seniors, people with disabilities, students?
So we don't break the demographic down that way necessarily. We know that about 10% are wheelchair riders, or they've booked using the wheelchair van as their option. And I can also say that the younger folks demographic, we give rides to people that are 13 and older. We have watched that one a little bit more, and the group of 13 to 18 is our fastest growing demographic. But we don't necessarily track age groups that way. We will more so in 2.0.
Okay, great. And then Catherine asked, I realize this is not unique to autonomous vehicles. Did you hear any feedback from blind or visually impaired, low vision people on ability to locate the vehicles?
Yeah, so we do have a few folks that are visually impaired that we've worked with. So we've gotten feedback from them, and our operator right now is helping out a lot. So we've got a few visually impaired. One person is completely blind that uses our service. And since it's a small community and our operators know the people that are riding, we're able to give them the usual type of ride assistance, like assistance from the door to the vehicle. So that's what we're doing right now. Yep, and we're working on tech solutions in the app and with the vehicle as well to help those folks out.
Great. Someone else, Jack, asked about the reliability of the AV, for example, not available for service on road problems. What's the backup if the AV isn't available? Reliability concerns have been an issue in our studies.
Yeah, well, the Toyota platform for us allows us to drive the vehicle in manual. This it's a game changer. So it's the Toyota Sienna Moss platform. And if weather is too bad, there's just days where ice and snow is so bad that nobody's out on the road. We can actually pilot the vehicle in manual. And when you drive the vehicle in manual, you're just driving a minivan. And actually, the operator can take over at any instance, just like you would take over from cruise control in your own car. If they use the gas, the brake, or the steering wheel, the operator is actually in charge of the vehicle instantly. So with that platform and with this technology, that allows us to pivot. If the snow's too bad, the ice is too bad, if something happens where, the autonomy is not able to be used that day, we just operate the vehicles in manual. And that way they're reliable for getting people rides because people have come to depend on this. And I completely agree that if it's fragile and needs to be taken off the road at any sort of bump or hiccup, that's not going to be a reliable service to your community. So this is a priority for us as well. And we were able to use our vehicles in manual mode when those instances come up. So for that person asking, in your studies, find a service that allows you to switch into manual because that pivot keeps you on the road.
Someone else was also asking about the vehicle operators and what extent their duties mirror those of drivers of public buses. And Heidi was saying that they receive special training around passenger assistance. I don't know if you want to speak any more about the training that they receive.
Yeah, so they do have specialized training that's for customer service and accessibility service. There's also obviously a lot of training that has to do with the autonomy functions. So it's all inclusive with all of that. And I would say that it's pretty close to the job of a bus driver. So meeting and greeting people and making sure people are of sound mind, they're not too impaired to take a ride, things like that. A lot of those responsibilities are on the operator.
Great. Catherine also asked, what was the thought process behind having only some wheelchair accessible vehicles and not a 100% wheelchair accessible fleet?
This is a research project and a testing project. So testing to make sure that we keep wait times low for everybody, making sure that the vehicles are moving around the system correctly, gathering data on how many wheelchair users are actually using the service. You can fit in more passengers in the non-wheelchair accessible vans. So by having two of them in there that were not wheelchair accessible, the idea is if we're so busy that we need absolutely every seat, we've got that. And we'll see if there's a need. If we're getting so many wheelchair rides that it doesn't make sense for us to have the non-wheelchair vans, we would pivot and then make that change. So again, always think of this project like a research and a learning project, and we will meet the community with what they need. So far, that balance has been good for us for keeping wait times down for everybody, and that includes the wheelchair passengers. So it's been a pretty good balance. If it were to shift heavily in either direction, we'd be ready to make a pivot to do what the community needs.
Um, Someone else asked, what will fully automated service look like with ramp and wheelchair lockdown usage? Will there always be a human companion, a driver, or rider companion?
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, we're just getting into theory now and we're kind of guessing a little bit, but I don't have any doubts that it can be fully automated. I feel like there's going to be a solution to this. There's a need for it. This is the direction that things are going in, and somebody's going to step up with a good, safe solution here. The important thing is to not be in a rush. And this goes for everything in autonomy. Yeah, we're kind of in a tech race to see who can get there first and whatnot. And all the companies are interested in that. But the right companies, and May Mobility is this way, we're taking our time. We're doing the research, we're thinking, we're putting proof out there that things are safe as we go. And we're not going to deploy something if it's not ready yet. So the most important thing is that we're really thinking, we're listening, we're coming up with solutions that will be fully vetted, fully proven before we put them out on the roads. And then we get to do a fair amount of testing with the things that are on the roads. But yeah, that's how I'd answer that. It's coming. I don't know when. I don't know what company's going to make that solution. But I can guarantee that we're going to fully test it and make sure it's a good solution before we deploy it.
Great. There are a few follow-up questions that came up from the previous ones. Andrew asked how often you have to operate manually due to weather.
It's tough to put your finger on an exact number, but just think of it like when it's so snowy or so icy that almost nobody's driving. Those are instances where you would be in manual mode. Um, Most of the time we're in autonomous mode though. It's in the very severe instances where we are in manual mode.
And then Jack asked what the Sienna's max speed in AV mode is.
Right now it's 30. And then this is something that May Mobility is working on. They have different versions of their technology that can go a little bit faster. Basically, think of it like this. With improved sensor technology, the sensors are able to see faster and farther. And with upgraded sensors, you're able to make your calculations and have the computer thinking faster and farther. So it's really that's kind of the limitation. Companies like May have the solution already, but it's a matter of getting the most updated sensors and lasers and things like that. So it's like every aspect of the industry has to keep evolving and going a little bit farther in order for it to actually work on public roads. So right now we set the limitation at 30. May could go beyond that, and they have technology to go beyond that, but it's at 30 for now.
Okay, well, thank you so much, John, for answering those, rapid fire questions there at the end. And thank you so much for your presentation, for presenting on the goMARTI project. If anyone else here has more questions, feel free to contact us at ATRC, and we will try to connect you with answers and solutions. Um, I want,
Grayson,
oh yeah,
um,
yes,
this
Myrna,
is Myrna. Could I just throw in a plug for accessibility awareness?
please do, yeah.
Well, this all started 10 years ago when we wanted to have an event for how many wheelchairs could be rolling successfully for 3 minutes, and we had 351. we went around in our county and found that the number one priority was transportation, lack of accessible, affordable transportation. And so big events happened. Went on to the Governor's Council for Community and Connected Automated Vehicles. And voila, by awareness, we have 5 goMARTI vehicles expanded for that. But over 10 years, that awareness has kind of accessibility for people with mobility challenge has kind of died down. And so we're attempting another Guinness record along with the Judy Garland Museum. We're going to see how many Wizard of Oz characters can be dancing in wheelchairs along the yellow brick road for 15 minutes to tunes from Wizard of Oz, played by our Itasca Orchestra. So we need 251 wheelchairs with their partners to do that. So if any of you have a hankering to come to Grand Rapids, Minnesota on this Saturday, it will be 30 years exactly from my accident, 50 years from the Judy Garland Museum. So we're celebrating quality of life opportunities for people with mobility challenges that to make the public aware that there are more of us out there than you realize. So come to Grand Rapids if you have nothing else to do. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Myrna. Thank you, Myrna and John and the whole Plum team for uh, the presentation. And I just wanted to let everyone know that our next office hours is going to be in July. It'll be on sidewalk accessibility challenges and promising practices. The registration link is in the chat, and we're a little bit over. So thank you all for coming, and I hope you have a great rest of your afternoon. Bye.